Francesco Lagutaine joins us. He's worked in and out of the industry for his 20-year career. He's now working as CMO and Communications Officer at M&T Bank. Francesco is going to share his reflections on how experience design is helping M&T drive and foster long-term relationships and better differentiation overall. So let's hear from Francesco.
Hi, everyone. I'm here to talk to you about my story around experience design and how it's become more and more core to what I do in the businesses that I've been working in. My name is Francesco. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at M&T Bank, recently the Chief Marketing Officer at M&T Bank. I previously worked in insurance, and before that I was working in banking as well. And the story that I'm going to tell you unfolds across these three employers of the past. So it starts in the beginning. I've always been passionate about experience design, and this is a story of how passion became actually a business differentiator and became a core part of how I see businesses are supposed to run themselves and how organizations have evolved. The organizations that I've been in have evolved along those lines. It started at a time when we were relaunching all our web properties, the post-login web properties. And as you all have experienced, it became very chaotic, and it was, last days, there were a ton of things to fix. And technology had a rule that we would go to markets with certain defects that were known defects, but we would choose to go to market in order to meet certain deadlines and make sure that customers could have those capabilities available. And the decision on go-to-markets was on a scale of severity. And we would go to market if these defects were below a certain scale. What I found out later was that all of UX issues were below that threshold that would stop us going to market. And for the engineer mentality, anything that worked, so if the underlying functionality worked, it was worthy going to market because the capability was available. And UX was more of a way of navigating that capability. We went live to market, and the phone number, our phone lines blew up. Customers weren't able to use the services, and they were calling us to help. And what we found out was very interesting. This is an example of an engineer versus a customer. We had this is one of many, but as one of the UX issues that we had in some cases perfectly aligned the field entry with the field description. And therefore, customers had a challenge of identifying should the date of birth be in the field slightly above the date of birth label or slightly below the date of birth label. They wouldn't enter it wherever it seemed logical to them, and then they would receive an error message, and they wouldn't be able to get across that error message. And that was the first time that as an organization, it really struck us that things work only when the user can work them, and no longer when the engineer says it works because the underlying functionality actually works. This incident brought back another story in my life that actually was probably 10 years before that. And this had to do with advertising. But it was probably the beginning in my mind of that notion of design becoming a differentiator for the business rather than design being the aesthetics that surrounds the business. And when we started thinking about making the case for design, we realized that we had to stop thinking like designers. Things that matter to us, aesthetics, responsiveness, desirability, were all words that to engineers and to financial engineers in this case sounded like frills. Engineers like to talk about sort of tangible, measurable facts. And so we changed our language, and we actually realized that in order to bring design inside the organization, we had to express design in ways that matter to the organization, not ways that matter to us. From a personal level, I then had the opportunity in my next chapter to test all of that journey all over again. I left Citibank, and by the time I left, it was a fairly mature design organization. And I joined Manulife in Hong Kong. And it's insurance. Insurance is a very old-fashioned business. And all of this work needed to be redone. What I was attracted by is the fact that I could redo it and sort of work through some of the challenges that I had sort of faced in the past, and maybe have a few decisions that I would want to take back, and go through rebuilding it from scratch. And I was there for 4 years, and the design team had some spectacular results. So I started from scratch, and knowing what I knew then, the point was how could I introduce this design thinking to the organization? Well, number one that goes before anything is you sort of have to help the organization understand the power of design, and that to a certain extent is probably the easiest part, because it's already sort of like being accepted as a sort of a market standard. But then we needed to think about what did it mean to become a design-led organization. Well, number one, obviously, it goes through talent, and at Manulife, we had to build this talent capability from scratch. And we went out and we had to go and attract design. Myself, I have a agency background. There were a couple of other people that had backgrounds that could inspire the designers, and so we hired a couple, and then we used them to hire more. We create environments where designers felt comfortable working. There was a community of designers inside the organization. But what was essential for us is that the designers were fully integrated into the organization. We hired designers that were prepared to work as part of a larger corporation, and therefore wanted to and were capable of reaching out and engaging on a day-to-day basis with the rest of the organization, because it was essential for us to make sure that talent was at the core of what we did, and design was at the core of what we did. The second part, what we did is from the very beginning, we set off agreeing and setting clear alignment with the business on where we were putting our design resource and our design ingenuity. We wanted designers to be pointed to the problems that the business wanted to solve. We presented design as a capability to solve business issues. It wasn't an ex post beautification of a business solution. It was actually at the core of how we solve a business problem. And at the core of that is actually having a set of KPIs that we can use to evaluate our progress, and making sure that it's clear where success lies. And then it gives us the ability to justify the work that we've done. And this obviously comes with a rigorous system of accountability. And this is accountability across the board. It's accountability from the design perspective and the design team perspective, of having clear accountability to the rhythms of the business, and therefore we had to teach the design team that we had to work within rhythms of deliverables, but also to the business in terms of understanding the process that design needed to do. And so with these three kind of guiding principles, we set up upon unleashing the power of this design team. We had some significant challenges ahead of us from a design perspective. And this is an industry that had outsourced, this is life insurance. So as an industry, it had outsourced its client management to its agents. And it was a very pen and paper business. And we were bringing this notion of experience design into this new organization. We had a second issue, which is we had, at a global level, we had two companies. We had a company that went to market under the name Manulife, and a company that many of you will be more familiar, which is John Hancock. Those two companies had two completely different identities, two completely different go-to-market styles, and yet we're sharing some of the same resources. And it was hard to create coherent and experiences when those styles were so different. And the third issue is that both brands had very dated brand looks and brand feels, and those were design systems for these brands that had been built in a world of 5 or 10 years ago. The design team, I'm extremely proud of the work the design team did, and actually this is probably a first that I know of actually a design team in Asia that drove the redesign of the entire brand system and the entire UX system for the rest of the world. Even though Manulife is a company that's headquartered in Canada, it was the Asia design team that created the new design system. And we created this notion that is called connected experiences. We wanted to create one design philosophy. We wanted to have people seamlessly work across all of the applications that we produced. And the other thing that was great in terms of going from 0 to 60, that for me was nirvana coming from the world I'd come from, we had the ability to redesign both customer interfaces, but also internal interfaces, some of our call center interfaces, some of our agent interfaces. And the examples that you see on this page, DTK and EPOS on the right-hand side are actually internal properties, but they share the same design DNA. And that really helped create and underline a fluid transition between the experiences on the left-hand side, where the client was more self-directed, to experiences that were assisted by the agent. But because the agent was assisted by a similar underlying digital experience, those flow from digital to human actually became much more seamless. And we had great success with that. At the core is obviously a mindset of thinking about customers and really obsessing about the experience that the customer goes through. And here I use customer in the widest possible term. This is about users. And so our customers in many cases were the agents, or as I say, the call center operators, but always start from the issues that the users were facing and the needs that the user were having in order to drive design. And in the space of 4 short years, we actually did a tremendous amount of progress against all of these audiences. I'm now gonna show you a video that sort of captures how design interacted with customers and agent across the entire life stage of the customers and all of the touch points that the customer had with the organization. And this that I'm going to show will look a little bit like some of those videos that we see to say, imagine a future when. But actually, I can promise you all of the experiences that you see on the video are all live now in the Asia markets. Okay, so now for the final chapter. I'm now joined a new organization. I've joined a couple of months ago, M&T Bank based in Buffalo. And M&T Bank attracted me for one reason. We have at M&T a fantastic challenge to solve and a fantastic problem to solve. M&T has been, for 160 years, an incredibly successful community bank. The roots of M&T is in serving our communities and being a very close part of the communities we operate in and servicing the communities from within. But M&T has also, in the last several years, grown significantly, and we've grown through a series of acquisition of community banks. And now we're looking at how we benefit from the growth and the scale that we have achieved, and yet remain true to our roots of as being a community bank. So how do we keep that identity of a bank that appears as part of the community they're in, and yet we're able to scale at a bigger level some of the experiences that we have. And what attracted me to M&T is not only the fact that we have this quite unique problem or quite unique challenge, but also that as an organization, from the CEO down and from the call center up, everyone has been committed to solve this issue through design thinking. And so this changes the dynamic once more. And I always feel it's kind of like a significant step forward, because now what we're facing is how do we take design thinking organization-wide and really rethink how the organization is set and designed and operates, so that we can really solve and tackle our main business problem with the customer in mind. Now, first, clearly, talent. We needed to bring in talent. We needed to bring new skill set, and M&T has been very active in the last 3 years at attracting new talent, hiring new talent. To give you a sense, I think only about a year or 18 months ago, M&T had one person that had the title, and was probably a loose title, of experienced engineer. Today we have 40 experienced engineers working in our organization. And so bringing in this new talent, creating the environment where this talent can thrive, was obviously the number one issue. The second challenge was organizing around our customers and really sort of pointing the organization, constantly looking at our customers as a direction to go to and a source of validation. We started with a very thorough segmentation work to really sort of help the organization understand and would quantifiably understand that this, not all customers are created equal, and that we had to think about our solutions with the end customer in mind and with the specific customer needs in mind. We then brought in a philosophy of running our bank through journeys, understanding that every interaction that our customer has with the bank is not a point-in-time service that we provide, is a journey that the customer is going through in his or her desire to get to a certain goal. And we've actually analyzed and we found out that we can probably run the bank, i.e. we can do pretty much everything that we're doing today by designing 26 macro journeys across the organization. And we're now in the process of reorganizing M&T as a bank around these 26 macro journeys, which has significant repercussion on the entire organization, because this is the business, the technology, compliance. They're all sort of oriented around enabling these 26 macro journeys, and people come together. So in conclusion, I'm going to give you two quick examples of how this organizing around the customer and really approaching everything with a design thinking mindset actually looks like. The first example is a product called Nota, which we have just recently launched. Nota is a very niche product, is a banking product that is being designed for lawyers. And this actually is an expression of that customer first thinking. We started with ethnographic research. We went and looked. Lawyers were big group of our small business customers, and we selected lawyers, but we then went to look into the lawyers' population and try and really understand what were some of the pain points that lawyers were experiencing in their daily life. One of the challenges that lawyers, especially the smaller size offices, face was managing trust reporting. It's a very complex. I'm not going to pretend even to start explaining it, but it has to do with complexity of reporting, extensive data that needs to be reported very, very precisely, and it was very, very time consuming for lawyers to do this trust reporting. What we really realized, though, is that trust reporting was tightly correlated to the information that they were already managing as part of their banking relationship. And so we pointed some of our experienced engineers, some of our designers, and some of our technologists towards solving this problem. And we came out with a digitally driven new way that is connected and reads data from your bank account and significantly simplifies and demystifies the way of doing trust reporting. This has been a fairly successful product. We've just recently launched it. We've had significant interest, and so much so that we've actually thought about going one step further and making this product available more ubiquitously, so not only to M&T customers, and therefore we've created Nota as an entrepreneur fintech that now is part of the M&T family, and therefore no longer is tightly connected with the M&T main business. The second example is an example that's possibly even closer and dearer to the bank's heart. It has to do with the Paycheck Protection Program. And most of you would know, with the pandemic hitting, especially the small business in this country have been facing pretty significant hardship. And back in April, there were significant uncertainties in exactly how the pandemic would unfold, how long the crisis would last, how bad would be the consequences on the business. And therefore, there was an intervention by the government with a significant amount of money that was destined to give loans to these small businesses to help them transition through the crisis. Obviously, the money was a significant amount of money, but it was a first come, first serve approach, and so it was imperative for all the banks to try and sign up as many of these loans for their customers as they could. From our perspective, we have a very, very significant portfolio of small businesses, and being a community bank, we really feel a great affinity with small businesses that are very much they're very much the heartbeat of the communities we exist in, and they're big constituents that we serve. And therefore, we really wanted to make sure that as many of our customers could have access to this payment protection program. And for us, it was a truly core to who we are to make sure that all of our customers that wanted a loan should get a loan. Where we started, though, in creating this is with the customer and the banker in mind, because we knew that interaction between the customer wanting the loan and the banker facilitating the loan was crucial. And in this case, this Paycheck Protection Program came with a long list of requirements and a very significant complexity of data that had to be, and information the customer had to present. And obviously, the ability to have this loan approved depended on the accuracy of the data that was presented. And this was a significant problem, and it caused significant anxiety both on the customer that needed that loan and on the banker that wanted to fulfill that loan. We realized that we needed a solution. We needed it quick because we needed to be ready for day one. And therefore, as part of the ecosystem that we're looking at, we were already looking and working with an external technology company called Blend that were looking at some solutions for us that were closer to this onboarding type of experience. And we actually partnered with Blend to design a specific onboarding program for our Paycheck Protection Program. And this was designed to really optimize and maximize the onboarding process, simplifying it as much as possible, and really working to minimizing the potential for error. And to give you a sense of how much we were committed to that process being simple and that simplicity to be driven by customer usage, the payment protection program went live on a Friday. And as you can imagine, I said it's first come, first serve. So there was a rush to sign as many of these loans as possible to make sure that banks started using the amount allocated for their customers. We held back because we wanted to make sure that the experience was as simple and as intuitive as possible. We felt that to win this race, it was important to be first at the end, not to be first at the start. And we spent the first weekend thoroughly testing our system. We caught dozens, if not hundreds, of small or larger UX issues. We caught some back-end issues. We fixed them over a period of the weekend. We went live 72 hours later. But because our system was significantly simpler than any other experience available in the market, we actually became one of the leading banks in the PPP program. Virtually all of our customers that applied for a loan were able to achieve a loan, and this was a program that the entire organization took great pride. To give you a sense, though, of how much was dependent on that experience that was so quickly designed, we roughly closed 1,500 small business loans in a year. In the short weeks that we had, in 2 months that we had to process the PPP loans, we processed 35,000 loans. And therefore, it was so important to make sure that that application was tested and was as easy as it possibly can and wouldn't fail us. And these results actually do justice to that process. But how I'd like now to end this conversation is to say, whilst, as you've heard, I'm incredibly passionate in designing unique experiences for our customers, in designing applications that are delightful, that are simple, and that are seamless. What should drive us ultimately is always our customer needs. And what really drove us in this instance is the fact that what we wanted to get our customers to stop worrying about their future, to stop worrying about their family, to get a sense that their future was in good hands, that they could go ahead and continue to build. As a designer, I take great pride in the fact that the application isn't talked about, because we aim to have this application not interrupt, be so simple and so intuitive that they're not interruptive of our customer lives, but really truly enable our customers to go ahead and live their lives.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Francesco. The audience is going crazy over here.
Yeah, it's like football games, right?
It suddenly stops, though. I'm not sure how they coordinate that. But hey, that was great. Really good to hear some of what you're doing at M&T and how you're dealing through the crisis and driving empathy and human-centered design, all things that I think everybody in the room can relate to. Couple questions here I want to filter in that I'm hoping you can answer. Here's a good one. How will you retain, you being M&T, retain the mindset and empathy demonstrated in the example you shared around the PPPP program?
That's a relatively easy question to answer, and I feel very fortunate for working for a company such as M&T, because this empathy, if I have to say, has been the greatest discovery for me joining M&T. There's a real strong culture of care for our employees, fellow employees, and absolutely for the customers. There's a really and that's why for for designers is a great place to be, because that care is not something that we teach, it's more something that we coach. For us, it's been more giving the organization better avenues to express that care than actually teaching them to care itself, which would be much harder.
That's great. I like questions that are easy to answer. It gets the ball rolling, right?
Thank you.
Good
You
stuff.
warmed me up well.
Maybe this one's a little more open-ended. What do you think customers want from a bank?
Wow. If I knew that, I'd probably be retired by now. And if I knew that exactly, I think customers don't necessarily want things from banks. This will sound a little trite, but customers want to do things in their lives. They want to buy homes. They want to go on holiday. They want to pay things. They want to transfer money. They have reasons why they need to access money, move money, help make money grow, save money, think about retirement. That's really what customers want. Our job as a bank is to actually make the bank in many ways disappear for 99% of the times, and make those transactions, those moments, as seamless as possible. And then really find what are the moments where a more meaningful and more noticeable interaction with the bank matters. And I'll give you the clearest example. When you're making a decision that and you're thinking about how can I get my kids their best shot at getting great education in the future, and you look at what at what you have right now and the mortgage you have to pay, etc. And it's kind of like tricky to sort of like find that avenue. Sitting down with a banker that can help you reflect on what's important to you and what's not as important, and understand some of the tools that you have, and really help you make a decision, which is going to have some trade-offs on a personal level, but it's going to end up making you feel good that you're doing something that's important for you and for your family. That's a moment where a bank has an opportunity to shine. But when we're paying stuff, when we're helping you paying stuff, when we're helping you sort of keep track of your money, we are helping you on these other things, we should kind of like, as much as possible, disappear.
That's a good answer. It is funny because on one hand, when it's sort of a utility mode, being invisible and seamless and out of the way is great. But there are other moments in folks' lives that are more emotional and uh, are much more benefited from a human touch. And what we're seeing out there is that banks struggle to recognize those two different modes, and so they take a bit of a one size fits all to both of those modes. And we just did some research that validated some of that as well. So anyway, interesting. Maybe one more question here. More about the design team at M&T. How mature would you say the design team is? How many designers roughly? How would you characterize their level of maturity? Is it low, medium, high, just at a high level?
Well, I think we have, in terms of designers, we probably have the spectrum. Um, we have some incredibly talented people. We have some people who are developing their skills. I think as an organization, we are also probably maturing, and we're understanding that that principle of taking design as a core differentiator versus utility is the process that we're going through now. We understand that the way people will experience our products and services, the way they will go through the experience, the M&T experience, is going to be what's going to create a lasting impression and what's going to stay with them. And therefore, design plays a significant role in our ability to differentiate. We've historically done it through service interactions. Now we have to scale on a digital level, and design becomes essential. And so we are building on those skill sets throughout the organization.
It's good to hear. It sounds like design is well respected within the organization, so that usually investments follow. So that's great to hear.
Exactly.
Francesco, I hope you're hanging around the rest of today. Thanks so much for giving some energy today, and appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me here. It's been great to do this, and I'll see you in the booth. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.